All right, so Chapter 2 test review. Now, hopefully you are coming to this video and picking up the pieces that you need. It's not one that I would like you to watch start to finish, but when you do get stuck on a problem, I want you to find the problem and maybe watch the first few seconds of the video, see if that gives you enough information to finish. The goal is to do as much of the problem on your own as you can so that you're better at it for yourself. So on the review, I'm going to go over each question so you can see how to do it start to finish. I am going to go kind of fast because there's a lot of problems here, and I want to make sure that we can cover them all. Fast forward to where you need, fast forward to the problems that you need to look at. Don't try to sit through this whole thing because that wouldn't be very fun. I think there's like 40 problems or something like that. So this first section, problem number A. What it has, just so you know really quick, up here, it gives you kind of a description of the topic. And then underneath it, it gives you this right here in italics is what you're going to see on the test. It's not going to have that top line. It's going to have that bottom line. So this one wants us to multiply each expression. So A is pretty simple. You just distribute the 2 to everything. So it becomes 2x plus 12. B is the same idea. We're still distributing, but this time I have to distribute a 5 and an x. So the 5 multiplies by the 6, and you get 30. The x and the x squared combine to be x cubed. Then 5x times a positive 1x is just 5. And then the x's combine to become x squared. And 5x times a negative 3 is negative 15. And we still have an x. Part C, now we throw a y in the mix. So I have 3x squared times y multiplied by 4x squared y squared. So just pick the pieces that go together. The 3 times 4 is 12. The x squared and the x squared go together to become x to the 4th. The y and the y squared add up to be y to the 3rd. Then I multiply it by the second term. 3 and negative 10 multiply to be negative 30. X squared multiplies by x to become x cubed. Y multiplies by y to become y squared. And then I've got one more term at the end. You almost can't see it because it's small compared to the other ones, and it's a 9. So the 3 multiplies by the 9, and I get 27. Everything else stays the same. So 27 x squared y. Section 2, add or subtract as indicated. So this is where we need to remember like terms. So things with x's can be added together. So that's 7 x's plus 8. The 8 can't be added to the 7 because they are not the same type of number. One has an x, one does not. Part B, you've got this negative sign in front of the parenthesis, which you need to remember distributes to everything. And all that means is it changes. I still have a 10x in the front, but that negative takes that 4x on the inside and makes it a minus 4x. And it takes that minus 7 and makes it a plus 7. And then I have a minus 8. So my parentheses are gone. That negative is gone. I distributed it. Now I combine like terms. 10x minus 4x is 6x. And a 7 minus 8 is negative 1. Okay, part C, it looks like everything is being added or subtracted. So I can just start simplifying my parentheses as I go. So this first set of parentheses right here, nothing changes. It's still 7x squared plus 2. But I've got a negative in front of this set. So I need to change this 3x squared to a minus 3x squared. And this plus 8x to a minus 8x. And then I have a plus x squared, and a minus 20. It's a lot of numbers going on. So let's start with the biggest exponent, x squared. That goes with the minus 3x squared and this plus 1x squared. So I have 7 minus 3 is 4, plus 1 more is 5x squareds. Now I look at my x's. I've got negative 8x's plus 1 more x, so that's negative 7x's. And then I'm left with a plus 2 and a minus 20, so negative 18. And I don't think I missed anything. I hope I didn't miss anything. All right, section 3, multiply. So this time, instead of just multiplying like we did in the first section, you have a parenthesis multiplied by another parenthesis. So remember, there's 2 different methods you can use. You can use my lazy method, where you just take everything that 2 has to multiply by the x. It also has to multiply by the 5. And then this x also has to multiply by everything. So that becomes x squared, and that becomes 5x. And then I combine like terms and rewrite it in order. So the x squared goes first. The 2x and the 5x become 7x. And then I have a plus 10 at the end. Okay. The other method that we used was the box method. So on this second one, again, I've got 2 parentheses being multiplied. So the first parenthesis is a 3x and a plus 5. The second one is a 7x and a minus 8. So now I'm going to multiply each box. So 7x times 3x is 21x squared. 7x times 5 is 35x. Negative 8 times 3x is negative 24x. And negative 8 times 5 is negative 40. The nice thing about the box method is usually your like terms are at a diagonal right there. So when I rewrite this problem, I start with my biggest exponent, 21x squared. These x's in the corners go together. 35x's minus 24x's is 11x's. And then I have that minus 40 left in the bottom. So that would be my final answer. I don't care what method you use, as long as you remember to multiply everything in the first one by everything in the second one. So on part C, 5x squared times 2x squared. Well, 5 times 2 is 10. X squared is x to the 4th. 5x squared times negative 9y is going to be negative 45 x squared y. Now I've got to do the negative 3y's multiplied by 2x squared. So that's negative 6x squared y. And then I got to do negative 3y multiplied by negative 9y. So that's a positive 27y squared. So now I'm going to start with my biggest x and start writing things in order. So 10x to the 4th goes first. And I think it's the only one. But then if I look at my x squareds, they also have a y. So those 2 right there are going to go together because they both have an x squared and a y. So negative 45 minus 6 is going to be negative 51x squared y. And then I have a 27y squared at the end all by itself. Okay. Again, be sure that you can do all those problems. You are going to be expected to be able to do that. Same idea on a test, okay? Next section, the instructions say to multiply, and that's it. When I look at x plus 3 squared, I don't initially see anything being multiplied, but remember x plus 3 squared means x plus 3 multiplied by another x plus 3. So just like the last 3 problems, you can either do a box or you can just draw lines, but you got to make sure everything in the first, the x gets multiplied by x, the x gets multiplied by 3, and then the second one in the first parenthesis, that 3 also gets multiplied by x, and it also gets multiplied by 3. Then I combine like terms, x squared's first, my 3x's go next. So 3x plus 3x is 6x, not 6x squared, just 6x's, because I'm adding them, not multiplying them. And then I have a plus 9. Part B, 4x minus 5 squared. That's just 4x minus 5 multiplied by another 4x minus 5. So let's do the box method for this one. So my box, on one side, I'm going to have a 4x and a minus 5. On the other side, I'm going to have a 4x and a minus 5. So 4x times 4x, 16x squared. 4x times negative 5 is negative 20x. Negative 5 times 4x is negative 20x. Again, negative 5 times negative 5 is a positive 25. When you start with this square up here, you're going to notice that these two are always the same, just like they were the same right here on the 3x's. Those two terms are going to always end up being the same. So now when I rewrite it, I've got 16x squared. And then these negative 20x's combine to be negative 40x's. And then I've got a plus 25 there at the end. Okay, part C, 2x squared plus 7y, that's just 2x squared plus 7y squared. So that's two of them being multiplied together. So, shortcut way, 2x squared times 2x squared is 4x to the fourth. 2x squared times 7y, that's 14x squared y. 7y times 2x squared, well, again, that's 14x squared y. Remember I told you those two terms that term would show up twice. And then 7y times 7y is 49y squared. So 4x to the fourth, I write that one first. And then my 14x squared y's add together to be 28x squared y. And then I have a 49y squared there at the end. All right, let's move on. That's all the multiplying that we're going to do. If you notice on the next couple sections, in italics, it says factor, but up above, it says it gives you a little bit more instruction. You are going to get what's in italics on the test. So you're going to need to know some of these. That top sentence gives you a little bit of a hint, but you need to know that you're only getting what's in italics to explain what it wants you to do. So for 222, factor out the greatest common factor. So 5x and 15, I'm looking for what goes into both of them, and I want to pull it out of the parenthesis. So a 5 goes into 5x and into 15. So when I divide them both by 5, that tells me what's left on the inside. The first one, I'm just left with an x. The second one, 15 divided by 5, is 3. So I have a 5 on the outside. It doesn't disappear. It just moves to the outside of the parenthesis. And then I have an x plus 3 on the inside. Part B, again, I'm looking for what can I pull out of the parentheses. So 18, 24, and 30. 6 goes into all of those. Oops, I better give myself some more room because there's x's. A 6 goes into all of those. And then if I look at the x cubed, x squared, and x, the smallest x is just a regular x. So I can't take out something bigger than that. So now I divide. 18 divided by 6 is 3. X cubed, if I'm taking one of the x's away, that's left with x squared. Plus 24 divided by 6 is 4. X squared, if I take an x away, just becomes x. And then negative 30x, negative 30 divided by 6 is negative 5. X divided by another x is nothing. Well, it's 1, but we don't write it because we're multiplying. So I just am left with negative 5 on the inside. Okay. Now, if I wanted to check my answer, I could distribute that 6x to everything and make sure I get the same answer I started with. All right. Part C, I'm factoring out the greatest common factor again. So 72, 81, and 9. 9 goes into all of those. X cubed, x squared, and x. I'm only going to be able to pull out an x. And then y squared, y, and y. Again, I'm only going to be able to pull out a y. Because the second and third term don't have a y squared. So I can't take a y squared away from them because they don't have one to take away. So 72 divided by 9 is 8. X cubed divided by x is x squared. Y squared divided by y is y. Plus 81 divided by 9 is 9. X squared divided by X is X. Y divided by Y is 1, so that one goes away. Negative 9 divided by 9 is a negative 1. That doesn't disappear, it's a 1. X divided by X is a 1. Y divided by Y is a 1. All those 1s get multiplied, and you just end up with 1. So that would be your final answer. Okay, 223. Factor completely. So these ones are nice because these are our shortcuts. Remember, when you see something squared in the front and a perfect square in the back, and most importantly, a negative, a minus in the middle, then my answer just becomes x plus 2, x minus 2. Because 2 times 2 equals 4, and x times x equals x squared. So part B, 36x squared and negative 25. Now remember, I don't know that this is necessarily going to work on the test. It doesn't tell me this will automatically work. So I need to look and make sure something times something is 36. Well, yeah, 6 times 6. Sorry, something times itself is 36. X squared is x and an x, and then I would have a plus and a minus, and 25 is 5 multiplied by 5. Okay, if that 25 had been a 27, that wouldn't have worked because 27 is not a perfect square. It only works because 25 happens to be a perfect square. So part C, that minus right there is my hint that this might work. 16 is a 4 and a 4. X squared is an x and an x. Y squared is a y and a y. Then a plus and a minus. 49 is a 7 and a 7. Okay. Again, if that had been a plus in the middle, this would not have worked. Okay, that doesn't work. It only works if it's a minus, and the numbers at the ends have to be those nice squares. Okay, 2, 3, 1. Again, look at all of these instructions. Factor completely, factor completely, factor completely, factor completely. This whole page just says factor completely. So that's what it's going to tell you on the test. On the review, it gives you a little bit of a hint, okay? So on 2, 3, 1, part A, it wants us, it tells us that A is going to equal 1. All that means is nothing is in front of the x squared. That's what that A equals 1 means. So these are our big X problems. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 2 and add up to 3. That's nice because there's only one set of numbers that multiplies to 2, 1 and 2. And because I want them to end up at a positive 3, those are both pluses. So I get x plus 1 and x plus 2. Okay. B, same idea. Big X, a 20 goes on top, a negative 9 goes on the bottom. Now, I should be checking that nothing factors out of all of these, but because there's nothing in front of my x squared, there isn't anything that's going to factor out of all of them. All right? There's nothing in front of the x squared, so I'm safe to just start using my big X. So two numbers that multiply to a positive, but they add up to a negative 9. So that means they both have to be negative numbers. And 20 is what? 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And I think that's my numbers right there, 4 and 5. So x minus 4, x minus 5. Now, positive 4 and positive 5 multiply to 20. But they add up to a positive 9. We want a negative 9, so they both have to be negatives. C, no greatest common factor. So negative 60 on top, 7 on the bottom, and I start my list. Now, one is going to be positive, one's going to be negative because they multiply to a negative. So I'm really looking for numbers that are 7 apart from each other, not add up to 7, because since one is positive, one is negative, then one of them is going to get subtracted from the other. So I've got 1 and 60. I've got 2 and 30. Those are too far apart. I've got 4 and 15. Those are still too far apart. I've got 6 and 10. Am I missing something? Oh, I did skip something, didn't I? 6 and 10 works, but I also have 5 and 12. Well, those two numbers are 7 apart. But when I put them together, I want them to end up at a positive 7. So that means my 12 is the big number, my 5 is the little number. So this is a 12, this is a 5. So x plus 12, x minus 5. Okay, 12 times 5 is negative 60. 12 times negative 5 is negative 60. And a 12 plus a negative 5 gives me 7. So those numbers work. 232, factor completely. Now, this one in the review gives you a little bit of a hint. After factoring the greatest common factor. So it is telling you, hey, guess what? On these problems, there's a greatest common factor to worry about. On the test, it's not going to say that. It's only going to say this. So make sure you try to look for a greatest common factor before every problem. So 2x squared, 2x minus 24. A 2 goes into all of those numbers. So I'm going to factor out a 2. So 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. 2x divided by 2 is just x. And negative 24 divided by 2 is negative 12. Now I can do my big X. And I put negative 12 on top, 1 on the bottom. So I'm going to have a plus and a minus since they multiply to be a negative. And I think my numbers are going to be 4 and 3. Because those multiply to negative 12, and 4 minus 3 is 1. So my answer becomes x plus 4 and x minus 3. And don't forget that 2 in the front. That's still in the front. It didn't magically disappear. It's still there, okay? Part B, there is something in front of the x squared. So I'm looking to see what goes into 4, 12, and 160. And I think the whole thing of 4 goes into all of those. So 4x squared divided by 4 is x squared. Negative 12x divided by 4 is negative 3x. Negative 160 divided by 4 is going to be negative 40. So when I do my big X, I've got negative 40 on top and a negative 3 on the bottom. And now I'm going to make my list of multiples. So 1 and 40. Now, they're multiplied to a negative. So one of my numbers is positive, one of them is negative. So I've got 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. And those I think are going to be the ones I'm looking for, 5 and 8. But this time, when I add them together, I want a negative 3. So the 8 is going to be the negative because I need it to be bigger than the positive. So my answer, my parentheses are x plus 5, x minus 8. And that 4 in the front still needs to be in the front because I factored it out. So that would be my final answer. And they do need to be side by side in a row. It will not count if they're not written this way. If they're not written next to each other as parentheses, you're not going to get credit for that problem, okay? Part C, 3x cubed minus 39x squared plus 126x. Ooh, this one tries to trick us a little bit because if I look at the numbers, a 3 goes into all of those, but this one has an x cubed, this one has an x squared, this one has an x. So an x also goes into all of those. So 3x cubed, when I divide by 3x, I end up with just an x squared. Negative 39 divided by 3 is negative 13. X squared, if I take one of the x's out, I'm just left with 1x. 126 divided by 3 is a positive 42, I think. And x divided by x goes away. That is an ugly 42. There we go. So now I have a 3x on the outside. The inside, we try to do our x method. So 42 on the top, negative 13 on the bottom. So they multiply to a positive. So that means they're either both positives or they're both negatives, but they add up to a negative. So they're both going to be negative numbers, right? So 42 is 1 and 42. It's also 2 and 21. It's also 3. Does 3 go into it? 3 does go into it. 3 and 14. 4 doesn't work. 5 doesn't work. 6 does work. 6 and 7. Oh, there's our magic numbers. -6, -7 add up to -13. So my parentheses, x minus 6, x minus 7, but I have a 3x in the front that I factored out that I need to put in my answer. Otherwise, it's not going to count, okay? All right, we've got 4 more sections. We're going to do this last section, and then I might do the last couple in a different video for you. So 2, 3, 3, again, all it says is factor completely. So you've got to decide what the best method is. Well, I have an x squared, nothing in front of it, so big X. And I need numbers that multiply to 1 and add up to 2. Well, that's easy because the only thing that multiplies to 1 is 1 and 1. So my parenthesis becomes x plus 1 and x plus 1. I will accept that, or because they're the same, you can write them this way, x plus 1 squared. Okay, part B, x squared minus 18 goes on the bottom, 81 goes on the top. They multiply to a positive, but they add up to a negative, so they're both going to be negatives. And 81 is either 1 and 81, 3 and 27. Those don't get me to 18. 9 and 9, that does get me to 18. So I'm going to get x minus 9 and x minus 9, or x minus 9 squared. Okay. Part C, we've got a 4 out in front this time. So I can't do my normal method. I've got to do something a little bit different. First of all, nothing goes into 4, 20, and 25. Lots of things go into 4 and 20. Lots of things go into 20 and 25, but nothing goes into all of them. So I have to take the 4 and times it by 25 and put that on top. The 20 goes on the bottom. So I'm multiplying to 100, positive 100, and I'm adding to a positive number. So my bottom's going to be, or both of my numbers are going to be positives. So let's see. 1 and 100, 2 and 50, 4 and 25, 5 and 20, 6, 7, 8 don't work, 9 doesn't work, 10 and 10, there we go. Plus 10, those add up to 20. But I had this 4 out in front, so I have to divide by that 4. I can't cheat. I multiplied by 4 at the beginning, so I have to divide by 4. So this side becomes 5 over 2. This side also becomes 5 over 2. So both of my parentheses are 2x plus 5. Or I could write 2x plus 5 squared. I'll accept either of those answers. They're both correct. So either of those would work as your final answer. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I'll record a second video going over the last group of questions, and we'll go from there.